live.
Okay, it's funny. I don't want to walk down the aisle.
So he gets Andrew connected?
He's connected in the back, but I don't think he's live yet.
Okay. I'll check with Andrew. We'll green light and get started. Oh, we're going. All right. So welcome everyone to our first informational meeting for our transitions to support student access. Appreciate you guys coming out. I know you guys have probably seen some of the information we put out about this plan. Today we're going to go over our plan briefly. We're not going to do as long of a presentation as we shared at our board meeting a few weeks ago. In addition to that, we're going to go over some of our thought exchange questions. I don't know if anyone here has had a chance to participate in our thought exchange, to ask some questions, to raise some questions, so we can kind of see what our stakeholders are talking about, where their thoughts are. And then we're going to discuss briefly some of the timelines, and then we're going to do a little thought exchange activity for everyone in the room. So we want to know, just for everyone in the room, what, if anything, we're missing, what we haven't thought about that you guys would like us to include in this plan. So quickly, again, we're going to go through it. I'm the college office. I guess I should start with that. I'm the Director of Communications and Chief of Staff. And helping me this evening is going to be Eduardo Cesario and Melvin Question, our Deputy Superintendents. So they'll be jumping in here. We're not going to be using mics. All of our voices carry. And so if you're having trouble hearing anything, just raise your hand. We'll speak up. So as you all know, this is our transition support student access plan. And we've stated a lot, what this plan, it's multiple years, it has a lot of facets to it, and what it's going to do is going to dedicate spaces to providing the full continuum of services within the district. We're going to honor the history of one of our most prestigious programs, which we'll touch on in a little bit. We're going to establish a central location to provide much needed resources and assistance within our community. We're going to service parents and community in an accessible, centrally located facility, provide professional development, to the collaborative spaces within the district, and improve learning and working spaces throughout the district. We've stated this before. One thing, if anyone who's been driving around the district, or if you've been in our schools, you'll see in the past several years, we've dedicated a lot of money to improving our schools. It's something that's been very important to our board, to our administration, to improving the way our classrooms look, how they feel, to make a more comfortable learning environment. We've allocated more than $30 million over the past 3 years. Over the next 7 years, we're allocating another $86 million to improving our learning environment. That's very important for our students, for our staff, for our teachers. So we're not done with our capital improvements. We want to be very clear on that. This project and these plans are going to continue while we continue a lot of our capital improvements. So some of our proposed transitions. We're going to be we're proposing to move some public-facing departments to our Waukegan Educational Service Center at 214 Washington Street. That's the downtown building, former First and West Bank. We want to create a community wraparound center at that 214 Washington building. And we're going to touch more on that later. That's one of the things we're really excited about. We want to create a behavioral, emotional, social teaching, or BEST center at the current set of our Lincoln Center building. We also want to relocate our AOEC building to the Lincoln Center. We want to transform our Welcome Center, which will be vacated with staff moving, into a professional development center for our staff. And we want to establish a Gerald C Academy at the site of AOEC, and we'll talk a little bit more on that. So I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Mulkey, our Deputy Superintendent, who's going to lead us through the first part, which is the Educational Service Center, is what's going to be the name of the building that's going to be located downtown.
All right, thank you, Mr. Alazakis. So good evening, everyone. As he mentioned, my name is Melvin Question. I'm going to talk about the Wraparound and Educational Services Center as part of the first part of the transition of this plan. Next slide, please. All right. So, Educational Services Center. This is located in downtown Waukegan on 214 Washington Street. This is where we hope to have all of our public-facing departments within this location. The estimated timeline to open this site will be July of 2023. So we're looking at a projected 12-month window before this site is open at the time that we're given authorization to proceed. Some of the current departments we're proposing for this location are Welcome Center, would be our Outreach, Family and Community Engagement, Child Nutrition Transportation, Payroll, and HR. So these are the departments that meet with parents on a regular basis, or they meet with staff on a regular basis. We want to create a one-stop shop approach. So some of the initial moves to the Educational Services Center would prioritize the department for the one-stop shop approach. As I just mentioned, it's very important that families and staff do not have to go to multiple locations to get the service they need. These Services would primarily be on the first floor, so as soon as you walk in off the street or from the parking lot, you can get these services and you don't have to go to multiple floors. So some of the benefits: it's a parent and visitor-friendly building. It's centrally located within the city of Waukegan. There's increased space to serve families. There's office space we're looking to develop that will maintain confidentiality but also provide for streamlined communication amongst apartments. There's dedicated parking for the site in downtown Waukegan. And we're also looking to establish a kids' play space so that when parents come, they can have their students supervised, their children supervised in a certain location while they receive services from the district. So some of the things we looked at as we planned this space and we talk about collaboration is some of our guiding principles amongst the departments. And those are the internal stakeholders that played a role in providing some of these principles for us. One, we want somebody that's welcoming environment, something that's collaborative, professional workspaces, accessibility, and not just accessibility from an ADA standpoint, but accessible as far as wide open spaces. And we also want to make sure that while the spaces are wide open, we have confidentiality to have one-on-one conversations with parents and community members. So this is a rendering of the main floor with some of those public-facing departments. Again, this is just a rendering. This is not what it's going to look like when it's all said and done. But you can see we have some workspaces on the left that would be kind of your welcome center area for one-on-one communications. You have a lobby and reception area in the front for greeting people. You have a private conference room. And then obviously that floor is much larger, but the front doors right in the center of the room would be on Washington Street where individuals would come in and make purchases. Some general timelines for this. We're looking to do design completion between May and June of this year. The Board of Education did approve us to do some schematic design for this, so we knew what type of scope we were looking at in totality. So we just need to finish that design process. Construction documents between July and September of this year, and bidding happening in October, with construction to start in January. And the first part of that construction is going to be the wraparound center. I'm going to get to the next set of slides. But then we would work our way up the building to the mezzanine, and then the second to the sixth floor, with an opening completion in July so that we can welcome individuals next August for the start of the year. So now our wraparound center. And this is going to be the community center. Now this is something that's very big for our district as well as the city of Waukegan. This is not just going to be specific to district, it's going to be for anybody who resides in Waukegan or the surrounding area to get a variety of services they need in one location. We're talking about therapeutic service, access to resources from community agencies. Individuals will be able to come in and get the support they need whenever they need it. These are some consensual services that will be hosted at that site. Juvenile justice advocates, SEL service, social emotional learning, clothing and food pantry, mental health support, substance abuse counseling. So essentially we're having outside agencies come in, utilize these different spaces to support individuals who need these services. So, funding and appropriations. So the state of Illinois has appropriated funding to create this space at this location, $2.5 million. We are going to utilize these funds to create the space with the support of our district architects, as well as district staff and our Board of Education and superintendent. So that's a one-time grant to create the space. Now the second piece is the acronym ICJ, Illinois Criminal Justice Information Authority. They've approved an annual cost of up to $800,000 to actually manage the space. So every year, $800,000, supplies, materials, salaries associated with the individuals running the space, we're going to receive those funds to help. And State Representative Rita Mayfield has really advocated for Waukegan to have this department recognition. So this is a general rendering of the welcome area, reception area for this space, which would be in the lower level of the building.
Sure.
And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Cesaria to talk about the proposed BEST center.
Good evening. So, as Nick was mentioning earlier, the BEST is behavioral. It's an acronym that stands for behavioral, emotional, and social teaching. It's a program that already exists in our district in several of our schools. And what this currently does is it serves students with IEPs and behavioral intervention plans. What it will allow us to do by establishing this center is provide more intense social and emotional learning, and also to expand those services for our students so that we can have more space. And so it's not meant for all students with IEPs, it's specifically for students with presenting consistent patterns of aggressive and dangerous behavior and whose needs exceed the resources in our neighborhood school. So a lot of our students, there are students that we currently serve that are outplaced. They go to different schools outside of the district, and we would be able to offer a full spectrum of services and expand on those in the best campus. So right now, to start off with, we would project at serving approximately 50 students in 6 to 8 classrooms. With therapy rooms, this would include offices for social workers, psychologists, counselors, administrative offices with staff rooms, conference room, library, media center, and a gym and cafeteria space. Again, I mentioned this before, one of the benefits to this is that some of the students that are currently attending classes in out-of-district placement would be able to stay within the Waukegan Public Schools district. Again, it also allows us to offer a full continuum of services. We can also, I think one of the greatest benefits to this is that we ensure that our core curriculum, the same curriculum that our students are experiencing in elementary, middle, and high in Waukegan schools, that's the same. We can move forward with consistency with that programming for those students. And again, we maintain links to the community. There's benefits for our parents and our students as well because they're staying a part of the Waukegan Public Schools community. So the timeline for that design completion would start August of 22 and move into March of 2023. And the construction would start September of 2023 and go through July of 2024. The next piece I'm going to talk about is the AOEC transition to Lincoln Center. And part of the reason we wanted to move forward with this is it maximizes the use of space within the district. It allows for other programming, something I'll talk about next. But it also allows for AOEC students to have a larger gym, larger additional spaces for additional programming, and allows for a greater number of students, services for students and staff. There are currently where the number of students served would be approximately 140. Next, we'll also talk about the Waukegan Professional Learning Center, which will give us an opportunity for those offices that are vacated in the Welcome Center. That space allows us to have a professional learning site, not only for teachers, but for parents and for other team members in our district. Currently, we are limited by space, and we often have to go to other areas outside of the district to hold professional development. But this would be an opportunity for us to have professional development, staff trainings, parent workshops, and community meetings. We would have another gymnasium that we could use as a multi-purpose room for some of those things that I mentioned, meetings. There's a number of things. The possibilities are endless, but it does open up a dedicated space for professional development. Again, something that we desperately need in our district. The estimated cost for this is it's to be determined in space considerations, and includes an architect fee of 7.75%. And this would come out of our capital projects fund. Gerald C Academy, and I have to say thank you to Colonel Painter for being here today. And I know that Colonel Painter is extremely excited about this. And again, some of these moves are necessary because it expands programming not only for one group of students and for one group of parents and our other staff members, but for the community and all of our learners and students. So one of these, as I was mentioning before, is our GRCCC will have a hub that serves our GRCCC students from both Brookside and Washington campuses. Again, it allows for a dedicated space for team drills and office space for our GRCCC staff. This is something that Colonel Painter really spoke to very passionately, and that was the need to have our older students mentor our younger students. It was a piece of the program that had been lacking for a number of years just because we had two separate campuses. It was difficult to do that. Having a dedicated space like this would allow our older students to mentor our younger students, and that's an integral part of that program. So, and again, it also expands opportunities within the general education population. We have to remember our JROTC students are not only JROTC, some of them are athletes, some of them are involved in the arts. It doesn't limit their opportunities, so they're still a part of both campuses.
All right. Thank you to Dr. Cesario and Mr. Moten on that summary. So we're highlighting some of these changes. So we're going to go over a quick summary, then we're going to jump into some of the other aspects of our presentation. So again, with our summary, one of the first things is the Wraparound Center and the Waukegan Educational Services Center. We're proposing moving some of our most public-facing departments to this downtown location where parents, staff, others can come receive that service in one area. Also, we want to establish that Wraparound Center there at the lower level. It's conveniently located. You come off of Main Street, Washington, and it's right there on the lower level. It's a large space in this Wraparound Center. It's going to benefit not just our families, but the Waukegan community as a whole. We also want to establish the Best Center at the Lincoln Center, which, as Dr. Sawyer mentioned, is an opportunity to take some of our students who are currently receiving services in their big schools, bring them into the district where we can work with those students. We also want to establish a professional learning center. Like was mentioned, we have a lot of meetings and such that have to maybe be done off district grounds. At this location, we'll be able to do professional development for our teachers, for our paraprofessionals. We'll be able to host a lot of our district meetings that occur there because it's going to be some great dedicated space for that. We all know how important it is that continuous education of our staff. GRCCC Academy, as Dr. Sartre just mentioned, is a great opportunity for many reasons. One of the most important that Colonel Painter and his staff has shared is that mentoring and how important that is for the older cadets to be with the younger cadets and to really help mold them as they grow. And then the AOBC Center at Lincoln Center, some additional use of gymnasium and some other spaces is what we're really excited about. We're really excited about this entire plan. We're glad that you guys have come out today and to hear more of it. As you all know, one of the things that we asked for was for people to participate in our thought exchange. Now, Thought Exchange is a platform that essentially we're crowdsourcing answers. So I don't know who in this room has already participated, but we had a lot of people log in, kind of give, it's all anonymous, kind of give what questions do you have based on the presentation you heard, based on the slide that you received, maybe you were at the board meeting, maybe you just watched the video of the board meeting. What questions do you have coming away from it? Now, this is a word cloud that kind of summarizes some of the responses and the words that we see most often. And what we did is we took the highest rated answer, so everybody can rate an answer. If there's a question you like, you rate it highly. If you think it's maybe irrelevant, you don't like the question, you can give it a lower rating. And so we want to see what does the community think are the most important questions that have come in. And we're going to take some time today as a group to address some of those to see if they answer the questions that you guys had. The number one question was about, will Lincoln Center have accessible and safe outdoor play for those students enrolled in BEST? So what you're going to see in bold is the question, and then underneath everybody has a reason or a chance to give an explanation for why they think that question is important. So what I thought was important at the time, Lincoln Center is not equipped to educate youth, having recreational activities allows youth to be able to regulate their emotions. This is the thing that we had discussed. I don't know if that's Sarah, if you want to talk a little bit about that importance of that play area and some potential ways that we can work around it.
Yeah, I think there are multiple ways in which we were discussing where we could place both inside, that space is critical, to have an indoor space, and there are spaces indoors where we'd be able to reconfigure them to be able to do this, but then also to have outdoor space. And so those are things that we're looking at as well, and most definitely there has to be a play space that would be accessible for all of our learners. So if it needed, ADA accessibility, it would need ADA accessibility, but we would ensure that it did. And there are architects that we would also consult with, specifically around playground construction for that. So we currently have some ideas for that, and it's part of our intent to do that.
And the best program is going to be more designed for high school students or middle school students?
It would be designed for all grade levels. We won't be able to roll it all out at once. But the idea is that any of those grade levels could be supported there.
Thank you. Just want to make
So
sure.
wide range of abilities, yes.
Yeah.
And grade levels, yes.
So question number 2, it again talks about what is the plan to staff the program for students who need alternative placement. So this is again going back to the Best Center. So we do have staff here from our DL department. Dr. Sari, I don't know if you want to handle it or pass it on to discuss a little bit about this. And the reason why I thought it was important is the challenges in finding DL staff. And that's an issue nationwide, is finding qualified staff members with that endorsement. We know that's a difficult challenge, and it's something that we're prepared for.
So we're continuing to, the one thing that we have here is we have some time. We have time, but we're also looking at a unique opportunity to work in a unique space and be part of really the beginning of what we have and offering a whole continuum within the Waukegan Public Schools. So we also have partners that we work with to recruit staff members, and so we've been working on developing a recruitment strategy with HR in order to ensure that we have staff. But the other piece I want to reiterate is that we're building up to this. We're scaffolding up. It's not happening all at one time. So we will look at starting this program here and building on it.
Question 3. Will Lincoln Center also have accessible and safe L2, sorry. Is there a space for special services such as deaf and hard of hearing? And they need more better support.
Again, we've identified a number of spaces within the building where we could have additional space for one-on-one meetings and for services. Those are parts of the plan that have to be finalized. But we've located that, and we have to remember that a lot of those office spaces are going to have to be reconfigured. And we're utilizing various parts of the building that will allow us to do this.
Let me help answer that too. So, just so everybody's aware, so when we go through and we look at this space consideration, we're talking about designing for the need, the specific need that we have. So deaf and hard of hearing is one need. You're not talking about a traditional classroom setting. You're having one-to-one space, small workspace, maybe 6 to 8 people. Depending on the layout and configuration, it will be able to house the students that will be in that specific room. And that's what we're going to ask our architects to do as we go through and do this design. So that every room has unique needs and can fit the kids that are going to be in that.
So I know Dr. Sari, you touched on this earlier, but what are some of the examples of wide range of programming that AOEC students want access to?
So initially what we had talked about were health and wellness programs and having the ability to do that. Right now, the space that exists in OEC is not a full-size gymnasium. And actually in Lincoln Center, we have a full-size gymnasium that we'll be able to access as well as other spaces. So health and wellness are just the beginning of some of those additional programming opportunities, as well as working with some of the staff that will be in the building to support. So those are, and of course, we're also looking at additional pathways for those students.
Next one, timelines. We discussed some of the timelines. Mr. Moulton, would you like to discuss kind of what's next up in terms of architects' work and what we're asking for approval on with the board?
Yeah, so we are going to be asking our Board of Education to approve us to proceed to do mechanical and schematic designs where needed, so we can stick with our timeline. So we're looking at a general 12-month timeline for each project, from the time that we work contracts to the time that we're moving in. So in general, we're looking at May to June of 22 to July of 23. And then the same, and that would be for the Educational Services Center and Wraparound Center. And then the same would be said for the June, July of 23, the June, July of 2024 for our ROTC Academy, our AOEC, and our Best Center transition, as well as our Waukegan Professional Learning Center transition. So first year, Educational Services, Wraparound Center, and then once those spaces become available to do some renovation work, we would do that work in hopes of the upcoming school year, which would be the fall of 2024, to occupy those spaces with those other programs.
And the mechanical and schematic design, can you explain kind of what that helps with? You know, why that's information that we need and how that's going to help moving forward?
Sure. So we're looking specifically at the programmatic needs. So the schematic design, or what we might call in the industry test fits, specifically for what the program needs, is what we're going to do first. The mechanical is going to be what is recommended to be replaced. We're also going to do that in collaboration with the Regional Office of Education, because there are certain things that we require for occupancy for our students. Currently, AOEC, the property, the building, is inspected on an annual basis by ROE, but the current Lincoln Center is not, because it does not house students. So when they're looking at those designs, they're going to create a space that we need. They're not just going to do something blanket that you would see all over the place. And we do have some commitment. We will have some commitment to them to create those spaces, to the point that they have all of the plans on bid documents and drawings. And we're hopeful that we can move forward with that piece after the board's recommendation at our board meeting tomorrow, so that we can take the next step and get those bid documents in contractors' hands, so we can get pricing and move forward with it.
Thank you, Mr. Melvin. Question 6. Why do these supports and resources exist for students at the lower end of the academic scale, while students who excel are essentially ignored? I know, Dr. Sario, we had discussed this question. Would you like to?
Yeah, sure. I think, this expands opportunities. One of the prime examples here of a group that this would impact, where it's a diverse group of students who again have interest in arts, athletics, academics, who are EL, who are diverse learners, and that's GRCCC. I think that is a large group where we're impacting that group of students, and who is representative of all students, and of all students of all ability ranges, and again is a diverse student body. So again, I think that this will open up additional opportunities to serve our students and our families.
What logistical upgrades are anticipated at Lincoln Center for remaining staff? So when Mr. Moulton was talking about the educational center downtown, he did talk about a number of departments that are currently housed in Lincoln Center moving over there, but they're not all moving over there. Some will remain on what is the south end of the building primarily, and so Mr. Moulton, if you want to speak through about that.
Sure. So some of our behind-the-scenes departments that are currently housed at Lincoln Center would remain there. That is the plan at this point. So we have payroll at the Educational Service Center. The rest of the business and financial area would stay there. Our IT department would stay there. Those would probably be the two largest, and we would have some others. Right now, the backbone from an IT standpoint, the fiber for the district, is housed at the Lincoln Center. And those spaces used to actually be living quarters, so they're very small office spaces, which would be conducive for the needs of those various departments. And those spaces could also house offices for the AOEC transition, as well as the Best Center program. So some of those departments will stay there. The ones that are currently in the north part of the building by the gymnasium will be relocating to the Educational Services Center on 214 Washington.
Thank you, Blair. Next question, and this is one we've heard from a few people. How will the Gerald C Building work? Will all Gerald C classes be there? Will Gerald C students have to be bused back and forth between the campuses? And so, Dr. Starr, would you like to answer that?
Sure. I think that right now what we've talked about was that we'd have their GRCCC class there. They'd have lunch there and one other class, so that we would be able to move students back and forth. Again, we want students to, and this is, again, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, Colonel Cantor, but This was very important for Colonel Painter, as he mentioned that the students need to be part of the high school population, not away. Because there are additional opportunities that they're artists, they're athletes. There are other programs that they're involved in, and having them have this ability to come together at one central location for those courses and for mentoring opportunities is helpful, but then it also allows them to go back to their respective buildings. And so we would have that the students would be bused back from the Brookside campus from here, whereas at Washington they would just be able to walk across that park.
And one thing that we discussed when we were planning this was we don't want our GRCCC students to have to make that choice. If you're a GRCCC student, we don't want you to have to choose between, are you going to stay in music or are you going to do GRCCC? We want to make it possible so you can do both. So you can do your art, you can do your GRCCC, you can do your AP class and do your GRCCC. But we want to make it to where they are at GRCCC, they're in one central location, where they're working together, working collaboratively.
Do you want to add anything really quickly, Colonel Painter? I feel like we have you here, we should let you speak to this, especially because you're so passionate about it.
I think that the interaction we've been speaking about is critical to the program, it's the way it's designed. The seniors mentor the juniors mentor the sophomores, and the sophomores mentor the freshmen. And I can't state enough how important that is to the success of our program. We teach leadership and citizenship, and part of that is being an active student in all programs, and we encourage it. If you'll notice, some of the best students in the school are actually senior leaders in the ROTC program, so we want to maintain that. And I support that as far as the logistics of moving. I think we can work that out as we go through it. I'm sure there's going to be some bumps in the road. But that interaction day to day, talking in the hallways, mentoring each other, talking about the training events that we're working on, that's the magic. That's where it starts out.
And when did this program start really quickly so people know? What year?
1916.
1960.
We are one of the oldest programs in the nation.
Amazing. Thank you.
Question 9. Where will the DL students in program place go? Yeah, currently in the AOEC building. Mr. Mullen, I know we discussed this on the place program. If you want to explain this.
Yeah, sure. So currently the PLACE program is our transition program, 18 to 21-year-olds. They do have 2 spaces in the lower level of AOEC currently. So as part of this transition, initially we're proposing that they stay in the location because they have a classroom set up, they have an apartment simulation that was built, a kitchen, etc., that was built for them to help transition that the district renovated for them and the program was put over there. So as we go through this, we are looking to contain or keep the PLACE program in its current location. It's a location the program is comfortable and familiar with, and it has been designed specifically for their needs.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Question 10. Mr. Mullen, why would you think to purchase a new location when you obviously need to build a new high school? And overcrowded, outdated, I assume they're describing our high schools. This is something that's come up. It's not something new. I went to school here 25 years ago. It was a topic of discussion. So, Mr. Mullen, can you, if you'd like to touch on this shortly, on building a new high school and what that entails?
In my line of work, I would love to build a new high school. Right now, the district does not have properties to build a new high school, and we believe that would also require a referendum, which would be a multi-year process to raise the funds, enough funds to build a new high school where we're looking at anywhere between, 120, maybe $150 million. If we wanted to build a space where all of our high school students could be at the same location. So that's why we are not recommending that as part of this program.
And so that completes the first part of today. What we do want to do a little activity. I'm going to ask that everybody kind of bear with me here. It's the first time I've done this activity, and so, pardon me while I get the technology up and running properly. So everybody's in the room, and if you're watching at home on YouTube, you had an opportunity to listen to us talk about the plan, answer a couple questions. Undoubtedly, there are thoughts you have that we didn't discuss. So we want to know from people in the room. If you have a smartphone with you, you can take it out. If you need a device, we have some Chromebooks for you up here. Let us know. You can either scan the QR code or you can go to tegjoin.com, enter that code, and we're going to take some time. Everybody can kind of enter what you feel our plan is missing You could also rate some answers amongst the group here and anybody who's at home on YouTube. But again, this is anonymous, so feel free to speak freely and openly. Are we all good with 4.5 minutes for a timer? Yes? So let's start with 4.5 minutes, and we will go from there. Yeah, well, you can scan it. Sure, I can take care of this. Open whichever browser you use, and then you can. After you're done, you can spend some time rating answers too. You could use, they have a star system, so you can rate the answers. Okay, we're in our last 20 seconds here. And so once the timer goes off, I'm going to need about 90 seconds to figure out some technology. And Dr. Starr is going to talk to you guys for a little brief time. Once we go over a couple questions, we're going to wrap, and then we'll stick around. You guys want to have some informal discussions? We'll stick around to chat. So if you're at home on YouTube, you won't be able to participate in that last part, but we do want you to participate in this next part, which will just take a couple minutes to go over some of the presentations. So I'm going to disconnect here real quick.
Yeah, so I'm just going to introduce myself again. My name is Gerald C I am the Deputy Superintendent of Academic Supports and Programs. I want to acknowledge some of the team that's here today. So, Dr. Nault.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, I'm Dave Nissen. I'm one of the executive or assistant directors for the first round.
Colonel Painter.
Ron Painter, GRCCC Department.
All right. And then I want to make sure that I'm introducing the superintendent here. Hello, superintendent.
Good evening, everyone.
Yep. And then again, I just wanted to thank everyone for being present here today and those folks that are watching at home. Because thank you, Ms. Polk. I don't have my glasses on, so I'm glad that you're pointing out because I really can't see past Dave Nissen. So Ms. Polk, you want to?
Hi.
Thank you. So again, I just wanted to thank the folks that are here today, and also those folks that are watching from home or elsewhere on YouTube. So we know that there are a lot of questions. I also want to let you know that we are going to have opportunities for the leaders of these departments and the folks that have been involved in really helping to put this together. Colonel Painter and Dr. Bublitz and our principal from AOEC, that Floor Carter will be here. We're going to send out some notes next week to host some special meetings about those departments and to invite more parents out and students to talk more about this. So please do look forward for those invitations. And again, Thought Exchange is a wonderful way to also share your ideas. And as soon as Nick is finished here, we'll
So this
Go
year,
ahead.
yeah, these are our highest rated questions that were asked by people in the room today, as well as some of our folks watching at home. So we're going to go over some of these, and then we're going to take some time to dismiss. First one, we talked about GRCCC, talked about AOEC, but one of the questions is how does this plan affect all students? And we talked about that just before we got to the thought exchange portion. And so Dr. Sario, we know all students is 15,000 students, right? And we know that the reason we wanted to get this question on here initially was because, we know it's difficult to make a plan that's going to make everyone happy, or a plan that's going to have something for all 15,000 students. And we wanted to ensure that we were touching students in different areas. And so Dr. Sario, I don't know if you want to speak more to this.
about number one.
Yes, please.
Yeah. I think that it is something that's impactful for the community at large, but also it does touch on a number of group of students. And it provides more opportunities both inside of our schools and outside, and during the day and outside of school time. So I think that is really critical, that it's not just focusing on one group of students, but it is a much more diverse group of students that we're talking about, and families as well.
I think one thing that we didn't touch on either is that it allows both programs to grow in numbers. If you're talking about the first one, the ROTC, right? It's one of the requests was to allow GRCCC to grow in nature, but also to allow the number of students that we support through AOEC to grow also.
And one other piece to add to this about GRCCC, which wasn't mentioned earlier, but we historically have been we've been able to serve a lot more students. This is one of the, again, as Colonel Painter mentioned, I believe this was the second JROTC, right? Was it the second?
I think we were number 6 in the nation.
Number 6 in the nation, but we've been here for over 100 years.
106 years.
106 years, and it's got a really proud history and a bright future, but part of that bright future is really dependent on really being able to maximize this and bring in more students.
That interaction is critical.
Thank you, Colonel Painter. We're going to move to question 2, our second rated question from this evening. The student perspective. I think that's a great question. It was good timing on what Dr. Sari was talking about, some of our upcoming meetings. So we have 3 meetings planned for the community. We have the one tonight, we have one on Thursday evening at the Welcome Center, one next Tuesday. But that's not going to be the extent of this type of work that we're doing. We want to get out there to the student groups, particularly some of these student groups that are going to be impacted, and talk to them and see what they like in the plan, where they think it'll be beneficial for them, where some of our blind spots. What did we maybe not see? What are we maybe not thinking about? And what do we need to work on over the next 12 months, 24 months, 30 months as this plan grows and begins to be implemented? We want to hear that student feedback. We know ultimately they're the ones who are going to benefit from many of these aspects. There's also the wraparound center and some other portions of it. But from a lot of these items that we're talking about right now tonight are going to really benefit students, and so we want to hear from them as we move forward. Is there anything more either one of you want to say?
No, I just think that their voice is critical, and again, there are aspects of this that we're not, that we know that our students are very savvy, and their perspective is critical in terms of moving forward with this. So it's definitely an integral part of what we need to be doing.
So where are you going to provide a venue to get their feedback from?
So that was one of the things.
I mean, other than, because they might not come out to meetings like this, right? So how are you
So
going to
that's an excellent question. So we're planning on doing additional meetings, and I think another way that we want to also do this is using thought exchange as well. That's another way we can get a wider range. But one of the meetings that I was referencing earlier, where we're going to have the different groups come out and have the different leaders come out, that's another additional opportunity, and doing it at varying times of the day.
And so we'd be taking it to the students, because we know Monday night at 6 maybe isn't the best time for students. So, whether it's GRCCC groups or some other groups, what is the best time that we feel we can get a good segment of that student population to talk with them through this? It is what the plan is going to be.
And Ms. Briscoe, another component of that, as I sit here and listen, is I really think that Colonel Hayner and for our AOEC principal, along with Dr. Bublitz and the leaders that are going to truly affect their departments or should lead this work with their students, right? So the colonel has a relationship with his students and his parents, and he should lead that process and the engagement of what they want to see in that new GRCCC academy, right? Versus the 30,000 feet from the district office, right? So letting it be more grassroots with the individuals that do the work, with the teachers, the parents, and the students.
Thanks, Superintendent, for that. Our next question that came from the group today, youth guidance, damn wow. I'm not sure if everyone in the room is familiar with what youth guidance is. Dr. Sari or Dr. Nault, I don't know if you want to speak to this and their potential future with AOC.
Hi, good evening again, everyone. Jason Nault, Assistant Superintendent. So yeah, youth guidance is one of the district's partners that provides mental health and SEL support to students. Students that are dealing with any type of issue they need assistance with, they can speak to the BAM counselor, the WOW counselor, etc. So they essentially do serve as counselors for the students. They have a curriculum that they go through that teaches leadership. They have individual counseling sessions and group counseling sessions as well. So these programs will continue despite the shifts that we're making in the buildings. These programs will continue. They will follow the students to wherever the students' need is, and they will continue in those buildings.
Thank you, Dr. Nault.
Yep.
Moving on to number 4, if approved, we discussed it. GRCCC would be moving their spaces that currently exist here at Brookside and at Washington to this new building. What will the empty space be used for? I don't believe we've gotten that far, but if you gentlemen have figured it out, let us know.
I wouldn't say necessarily say that, but space is always a consideration in all of our schools in the district. We always have a need for more space, whether it's more one-on-one time, counselor, interventionist, or it's a smaller group activity, or just general office space for staff. So we have not gotten that far in the plan as far as discussing how the vacated space would be utilized, but there is no intention at this time to take that space out of the high school and use it for another purpose. We would let that be at the discretion of the building principal that's managing the building to best utilize that space.
And there are some dedicated spaces already, just like with the PLACE program, that have been built up. There's no reason to replicate that somewhere else if it already exists in one place. So I think some of those, something that is specific to the needs of GRCCC that does not have to be replicated can stay in place because we're still going to have students from GRCCC in the Washington campus. And if there's a space here in the basement where some of their activities take place, then that would be something that we would discuss. But more than likely, if we don't have to move it, we're not going to move it.
I also believe that as we bring more pathways or programs that students can be involved in the high school, that these areas could be an area that can be utilized for such, right? STEM, etc. Nursing. There's a couple of things on the table yet that we're still working on that are not going to be built out this year. But those are definitely some options, right? So as of right now, we do not know what exactly will go in that space, but it will be utilized for student services. That's what we'll have.
Thank you, everyone. And last question that came, or the last of the top 5 questions that came this evening was more academic support. And so that kind of ties into number 1, what do you feel is missing? Dr. Sardo talked about that a little bit. If you want to close us out with, again, the importance on how we're going to support students through this.
Yeah, I think, talking about space for the wraparound center, that's where I would start, social emotional. And that's primary, especially coming out of this pandemic. And with what we know is that there is a need for more social emotional support. And I think that is one critical piece of it, having that wraparound center. It doesn't only serve students, but it serves their families and it serves people that they know in the community in general. And so I think that's one way to support. It starts with that. I also talked about how we're expanding opportunities. And then the superintendent just mentioned something, is that this is going to open up space, it's going to open up opportunities for us to expand services. Some of those services we may not have, there are certain things that we're talking about, but we haven't surveyed all of the students on them, and that's part of the high school transformation plan as well, is to survey students to gauge their interest about different programs that we can bring in. But we do have a number of ideas. One that we've heard about a lot from various stakeholders is really grow your own for paras and teachers. And that is something, again, where we're talking about the Welcome Center and having that transition to our professional services building. That's where we can provide professional development. That would be another site where we could utilize that also for students. So again, it's there are some things that are definite, and then there are other pieces that we're working through. But we do need the input from various stakeholders, especially our students.
And so the input is a good point. So as you guys saw today, we went over 10 questions. We have 2 more of these meetings. We may not be sharing the same 10 questions. We're going to try to mix it up. Also, the questions we receive, the way the questions are rated, are going to heavily dictate which questions we share on Thursday evening, and then again next Tuesday. So if you're a parent, if you're a staff member, links to this thought exchange are in your emails already. You can find it on our website. It's on our social media. This is to our main thought exchange where you could continue to rate questions, ask questions. So when we have our next 2 meetings on Thursday at the Welcome Center, and then Tuesday, May 3rd at noon at Lincoln Center, we can continue to share out based on some of those questions, some of the thoughts people have, because we want to ensure that as we're going every step of the way for the next 30 plus months, that stakeholder input is a part of that. We want to make sure, this is something we're really excited about, and we hope everyone else is as well, and we hope to continue to work collaboratively as we're moving forward. That's all we have for this evening. Again, we appreciate everyone on a Monday evening coming out and joining us. We don't want to take up too much of your time. We want to allow everybody to get home for supper or whatever else you have planned. We'll stick around. If you guys want to talk, if there's anything you want to ask, we'll be here to chat, ask a question, talk about next steps. If there's any ideas or anything you want to talk over the group with, please feel free to. But otherwise, if you're watching at home, have a great night. Everyone here, drive safe, and thank you again for coming out.